You're listening to the Not Just Numbers podcast, a conversation with mathematicians on their work and their lives to get to know them and discuss common biases and misconceptions.
Hello everybody and welcome to the second episode of Not Just Numbers. Today, me and Marcello will talk about what it's like to teach mathematics. And for this, we're joined by Tamás Görbe and Cecília Salgado.
Very nice to have you here with us. Thank you very much for accepting and for coming here and sitting a bit out of your comfort zone. Usually, our first question for the guests is, can you please introduce yourself and tell us about your research as if you were 5 years old? So try to make it as simple as possible. Please, Cecília, would you like to start?
Oh, yeah, sure. I am Cecília Salgado. I've been working here at RUG for 2.5 years now. And so about my research, you asked, right? I work in geometry and number theory, which means that I try to mix this both. So to talk as you're 5, it's quite a challenge. Let me try to talk as you're 12. It's okay.
Sounds good.
So we want to solve, like polynomials. And we want to find solutions, say, which are rational numbers. And in order to do that, we give some form to that. The philosophy is that the simpler this form is, we have more solutions. So if we have like a complicated shape with many holes and many twists, we shouldn't find really solutions. And what I do is to try to find very simple shapes within very complicated ones. So that's kind of what I do. I think for 12-year-old it would fit, right?
Nice. Tamás?
Thanks for the invitation. My name is Tamás. I am from Hungary. I joined at the Bernoulli Institute 2 years ago, and my research is on mathematical physics in general and on integrable systems in particular. Integrable systems, as the name suggests, are ones that can be integrated, but I guess at the age of 5 you only have an intuitive notion of integrals. So the idea is that there are physical systems that move around. Imagine just particles moving through space. And there is this famous equation, F equals ma, Newton's second law, which is a differential equation. The point is that there are the derivatives of an unknown function, the position of a particle, and you want to find it out from the second derivative, which is the acceleration of the position function. To integrate that equation is to solve the equation, basically. So in that sense, I'm also into solving equations. Only the unknowns are functions. And whenever you look at a realistic problem, this equation becomes impossible to solve. So as soon as you have something close to reality, it's already impossible to solve. But there are these very special, unique examples where even though they are complicated, you can still solve them due to some property that these systems share. And that property is what we call integrability. It has to do with the system being very symmetric in a certain way. And those symmetries can be utilized to solve the problem. That was a bit high level.
That's perfectly good. Why you say it's a bit high level? I love it.
For a 5-year-old, I would just, that they would be scratching their heads.
Yeah, but that's a figure of speech. Let's say it's to make it as simple as possible so that it's approachable to people.
Okay.
I think 12 years old is a perfectly reasonable target. You can even go to 15 if you want.
Okay. Yes.
So it's very interesting because they are very different, yet both related to finding structure using symmetries, finding solutions of problems. I wonder what it is that drives you, Cecília?
No. What drives me, to do this kind of research?
How did you get there, and what is the motivation that makes you so bright and illuminated when you talk about this?
Okay, that's a long story. I tell a part of it, and you can just cut me when it's too long.
Oh,
okay?
There is no cutting here, I'm afraid.
Okay.
You're here to tell your story, right? So it's fine.
Okay, great. So I started mathematics, and I had no clue of what mathematics is really. What was going to happen, right? But in my first semester, I just fell in love with this idea of using this structure, symmetries, understanding groups, and so on in order to see what is happening in something that doesn't show any shape. Right? If you write down x squared plus y squared equals to 5, why there should be shape behind it. And the fact that there is a shape was for me something just fascinating. And then getting to see that there is much more than just that, this kind of very simple shapes, was something that made me want to know more and more. And the fact that it mixes mathematics from different fields is, I think, one thing that I like a lot. I like this mixing, this working on many fields with many languages at the same time. So this was something for me, but I was just going somehow with the flow in the sense that it was all making sense for me. So why quit? That's how it was.
Did you always know that you wanted to study mathematics in high school?
Oh, no, not at all. I wanted to be a doctor, an astronaut, a diplomat, a dancer. I wanted to be everything except like really mathematician. But when time came to choose, I mean, I liked everything. I was into sports, I was into physics, history, biology. But when time came to choose, mathematics seemed to me the most versatile of all the things that I was learning. And I had this illusion a little bit, but also makes a little sense, which is that with mathematics, you can do whatever you want. Of course, that you cannot just dance later, right? You learn mathematics and it's not like you switch like that. But I felt I could do more with mathematics, that it was more like really flexible. But I didn't know what was going to happen. I just went for it.
Nice. Was it similar for you, Tamás?
Yes, I'm afraid we are going to rhyme a lot in this podcast. For me, so when I was in high school, I was studying humanities. When I joined high school at the age of 14, that's when we start in Hungary. And it was only at the age of 16, fairly late, according to some people, that I discovered that I'm really into mathematics. We had this wonderful, amazing person for a teacher of mathematics. He managed to, create this magical atmosphere in a classroom in 45 minutes with a group of 16-year-olds. That is quite remarkable. He talked about mathematics and gave us problems in a way that we felt like we were discovering some fundamental truths. And that was quite spectacular. I mean, to have that experience at the age of 16 or even earlier, I think that's something we all want our students to experience, that feeling of bliss when they figure out something, the aha moment. So that I was lucky to experience that fairly early. So 2 years later, when we have to decide what to study, it was clearly, for me, it was clear that it should be mathematics. But during my studies, I started to shift my focus towards more applied things, more to do with applications. And eventually, I realized that all of these beautiful abstract ideas of mathematics that I've learned about groups, about functional analysis, can be used and are used in physics. And when I've seen all these, to me, distinct-looking branches of mathematics coming together in this beautiful harmony in mathematical physics, I was hooked. So this was when I was a third-year bachelor. So at that point, I just realized, okay, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And next to that, I started TAing fairly early in my studies, and that I also enjoyed a lot, explaining what I've just learned to my fellow students, because at that point the age gap between me and my students who I was TAing for was like 2 years, pretty much. So I was feeling like I'm sharing some knowledge with friends, and that was also a great feeling.
Right, that's super interesting to hear. I was wondering, so you said, okay, I really like the teaching part. So was it always very clear that your career would also lead towards teaching mathematics, so becoming a professor at a university?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. So when I studied humanity, I went to study humanities because I wanted to be a history teacher. So somehow teachers had a great effect on me from an early age. So maybe not university teacher, but just teacher in general for some reason. I had that desire.
That's a good answer. Thank you.
I should have started with saying probably that my position has an educational profile. So when I started my job here at the University of Groningen, I was one of the very first tenure trackers with an educational profile at FSC. So it has to do with teaching.
Yeah, we will get back to that in the second part of the episode.
Cecília, was it for you always very clear that you wanted to pursue a career in academia, or has there been some bumps in the road?
First, no, it was not clear at all, because as I said, I didn't know what mathematicians do. So I started, and I was very privileged in the sense that I didn't have to work while studying. And this made it just, well, I was having so much fun. Why? Like, then I just go on. And I think it was at my PhD where I started to wonder, what am I going to do from now on? And it was not clear that I would go on doing mathematics. I knew that I liked it. I wanted to go on. But I didn't know if I could, if I would find a job, if it was easy to find a job. Everything was a big question mark for me. So I started to look into like working for a bank, consultancy, and so on. And I got my first postdoc, which made it simpler to go on. But it was not so clear. I think only when you get your really permanent job that it becomes clear that you can stay. Otherwise, you are just doing what you love. And I think that's why we stay despite not having really security very soon, right? So that's why we stay in mathematics, at least for me.
Yeah.
And bumps in the road, as I said, I think I only started to see bumps later when you have to find a job. I think the biggest bump, but one could say, but for me it was not a bump, it was really happiness, was when I was, so in my first postdoc, I was having my first kid. And this is a big thing, right? I didn't know what was going to happen, and then I had to find safety. So, but that was amazing. It just made me get focus and find a job. But I was lucky in many ways.
That's great to hear that it's not such a linear path for everybody.
Not at all. Yeah.
Yeah. That's something we had in our first conversation. You remember going around in loops and somehow ending there, but in a very, very weird way.
Yes.
Did you have also to take some detours, or was more linear for you, Tamás?
Well, if I look back, and compared to other stories I've heard, it is fairly linear. Although with the insecurity, I can completely agree that it's not at all sure that you will end up with a job in academia, even if you want it really bad. Unfortunately, that's the case. But for me, it was fairly... So after I started my studies at university, it was fairly linear in the sense that I really didn't know what else I could be doing. That's a failure of university education right there, because they weren't showing me what else I could do but to study. So I was studying for my bachelor. I finished my bachelor. What else could I do? Well, let's do a master's. I did get my master's degree. Okay, so where next? Well, there's this PhD thing. I did my PhD, and by then I just even though I knew of the existence of industry and applications of mathematics in various sectors, I was just more comfortable in the academic setting.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm sorry to disrupt the discussion, but there is a question I had since like 5 minutes. I also wanted to be an astronaut at a certain point, so I would like to make
Me too.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to ask. How many of you wanted to be astronauts?
Who wouldn't want to be
Yeah, that's
an
it.
astronaut?
But then the next one, I never dreamt of being a doctor, but I was a big fan on Indiana Jones, and I wanted to become an archaeologist with a whip. So
With a whip?
yeah, of course, I wanted to become Indiana Jones.
With a
What
whip.
questions?
With a whip, yes.
Yes,
Well, it comes
it's
with
the
a-
most important thing to survive in all these adventures.
Sure.
So, did you also want to become archaeologist, or is just astronaut
I
that
want
unify
to be an
us?
astronaut, but with a whip.
But it
Very
doesn't make
handy.
any sound in space.
That's true, but you
Doesn't
can catch
matter.
stuff, right? And bring
Yeah,
them back.
fair enough.
I mean, they tend to float away, things in space, so you might want to take
Whip them back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sorry for disrupting the discussion, but I was just curious. I couldn't wait more.
Yeah.
I have another question. So we started talking about some of the failures of the system, like failing to tell you what else. But I was wondering, so far we had what is nice. We had the challenge of doing a pod with a kid. But what were for both of you the big challenges and obstacles that you had to overcome and that you weren't expecting, especially? Cecilia, what do you think?
You mean in doing research, in
In your
pursuing a
path
career
from
in academia?
from a young student to becoming a professor in mathematics?
Well, I think it starts when you start university, right? That you come from school where you just learn things by heart and you're not taught very much how to think and how to solve things, right? You're not taught very much why is this true, but rather do this. And if you know enough like formulas, you will have a 10 and that's enough. And then at university, you have to show like stuff. So every time that I would read the word, show that, prove that, I would freeze. And I was like, oh my God, how do I go from here, right? So this was the first thing. And I think the second one, which is related to that, is to deal with frustration, right? Which is, we don't prove results in one day. Well, some do, but I don't. And we also don't show things sometimes, like even in 1 month, 1 year. Sometimes we take 2 years or more to prove something. And for me, this was the biggest thing, was to learn to deal with that, with this like failing and also waiting to really to be more to deal with frustration, this resilience that mathematics asks from you. And it's something that you learn. I mean, you don't have to come with that. Yeah. So this is one thing. Of course, also when you want to build family, right? Now you have to find a job not only for you, but for two of you. Mm-hmm. And this is a big challenge. And many people stop mathematics because of that, and because it is really hard to find a place in the same city, especially if you want to have kids later. So this is also, I think, one very big challenge.
The famous academic two-body problem.
Exactly.
Right? It's solvable, but really hard to solve. I mean, I've seen people solve it. I've seen many people struggle and drop their profession because of it. And there is always some compromise. One or the other or both have to give in and then let some wishes and desires go, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I would say that this is also part of life as a couple, right? Sometimes you have to find a compromise between the two, no matter what, and no matter what the situation. And,
it is. I completely agree.
But I agree that academia can make it harder.
Oh, yes. Yes. So if I can add to that, I was thinking, what else could I contribute with to this list of things? Overcoming your frustrations, getting used to proofs and the way of doing rigorous mathematics. For me, impostor syndrome was a big one, and it still is, to be honest. Like from the very beginning, when I started studying at university, I saw all these brilliant peers of mine, like much more prepared, much more powerful, much quicker in thinking than me. And I felt like, oh, is this the right place for me? I mean, I'm just a kid from like a small city in Hungary. My education was not very good. I was good in my class, but that was a fairly average class. So I struggled with that a lot and still have these thoughts whether I am in the right place whether someone will find out that I'm actually an impostor.
Well, yeah, that resonates a lot with me. Before I tell you my impression on it, can I ask you, what did you do or what are you doing to cope with it?
Yeah, I think so. It's tricky. You have to reflect a lot, see and start building up a list of things that you achieved, not compared to others or relative to others, because that's where it's coming from, right? The external things and comparing yourselves to others. But actually how you grew throughout your studies or your years of studying and the things you understood, to realize something that like in research, just like in studying mathematics, researching mathematics, you often have this life cycle of first being introduced to a problem or getting a question that you barely understand, then slowly but surely understanding the parts, ingredients in that question, but still feeling really stupid. And maybe for years you are struggling with a certain problem, feeling really, really stupid. But in that process, you are actually building up some knowledge, some important links in your brain. And when you finally crack it, there is this pure bliss, perfect happiness that lasts from minutes, perhaps 2 hours. After which you feel stupid again for not being realized how simple it was all along, the solution. Our brains are very peculiar in that, I think. But to get back to the point, it's just, I think, self-reflection and just telling up what you achieved, how you went from being in a certain state, grew into the person you are now, helps.
I feel that, although I don't know, even when things go very well, I have this background noise that is because I was lucky. And I found it very, very hard to overcome that. And for me, I don't think I can remove that voice or that noise. But at least by talking to others, somehow making myself vulnerable and say, I'm feeling like this, and then realizing that many other people around me were feeling like, not everybody, but I was not alone. And then somehow it made me feel, perhaps it's just my impression, because we all have the same weakened impression of ourselves. So this is the thing that actually clicked for me after way too long. It doesn't solve the problem, but it makes me feel more comfortable with it, let's put it this way. As a student, how's it for you?
I really recognize these, but then from the student perspective, as you said, there are always very smart people who seem to know everything and be able to solve exercises quite easily. And I've also tried to overcome this a little bit. And something that's like a mantra that I always try to keep is I hear all my own stupid thoughts, but I don't hear other people's stupid thoughts, right? Like you only say the stuff that you're really sure of or you're really confident in. You don't say, oh, is this maybe true? Is that maybe true? Oh no, that's stupid. That's stuff that happens in your head. And I think that realizing that has changed my perspective a little bit. And what you said, like feeling lucky, that really resonated with me. I have often felt very lucky to be in a position where I am, and that at some point my luck would run out and that things would start to collapse, everything that I've worked for. And that's something that I'm still struggling with, to be honest. But I think that a lot of students feel this way, and friends from my study that I've talked to, they also feel like imposter syndrome type of emotions sometimes. But it's also I'm not glad that you guys are experiencing this, but it gives a little bit more confidence that even though you're feeling this way, you're able to advance in your career and you're able to deal with it somehow.
Right.
I wonder if it was perhaps even harder for you in a male-dominated world, academic, I mean.
If it's harder, I don't know, because I don't know really how it is for the two of you, but it's nice also to hear what you say. So it's, to start is that I think for women, at least for me, I didn't feel that people expected a lot of me until I started to get further. So this is one thing. I didn't have this until I got my job, actually. So as a student, I just felt I'm good. I'm doing what I can. And of course, I felt lucky. But lucky is actually privilege, and we should name it. I think we should see we are not just lucky. This luck has a name, and it comes from many places. It comes from the fact that we had money to go to study, that we could eat, that we could do so many things that so many of us cannot. So I felt lucky until I noticed that I was this white woman from a family who could pay stuff for me, that could study, that could learn languages. And this made things a little more clear that why am I here? It's not only merit. It's never just merit, right?
Yeah.
So, and then when I got my job, I started to feel, well, now I have to show that I earn this, that I deserve it. And it's a mixture because with every grant that I get, with every prize or everything that I get, recognition, I feel this mixture of, wow, this is great. This makes me want to do more, to do just better. But it also makes me think, well, they will see that I don't really deserve this. So I have this, I kind of constantly question myself. I'm like, oh, wow, I did great. I got this grant. And then just after, I'm like, well, they're going to see that maybe I shouldn't have this grant or I shouldn't be here. So I do feel this a lot. And I think Tamás said something which is key to that, which is we shouldn't be looking at what they did, at what you did. We should look at what we did. So, and this is the thing. Ego is something that we all have, and it's always very big for many of us. And I think that's why we suffer so much. So what I do to handle this is I really meditate a lot. Meditation is something that helps me to kind of disconnect, separate myself from this ego, from this gigantic ego. So I try this a lot, to look at myself and to look, like I think also what you said about we don't know what people go through. We don't know what's in their heads. So this also brings us just closer to them and brings us also, I think speaking about that is very helpful.
Yeah, I agree. Wouldn't it be better world if we all shared these stupid ideas, half-baked ideas? You know, in my class, I always encourage students to do that, to just give me any idea they have. I ask them lots of questions during that 90 minutes that we share in the same room. And I want them, and I tell them, this is a place to make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. If you get everything right, what did you learn? Like, you already knew it. Why are we here then? So I always tell them to just give me any idea they have. Try to create this welcoming atmosphere. Tell them that this is the place where we accept these ideas, work with them, compare them to one another, but only ideas, not people, and try and learn from these mistakes and this shared experience.
Oh, I love this. I'm going to steal it in my classes.
This is honest. I mean, and this is what I do. Every course that I teach, every student that I teach in a course, I'm not teaching courses. I'm teaching students. This is the first lecture, or a part of the first lecture is just telling them, setting it up that this is a place where we welcome ideas, whatever they may be.
That's fantastic. I actually feel bad because I'm going to disrupt the discussion again, because I want to get back to the teaching. But before we head there, we have talked a lot about us as mathematicians. We have talked a lot about mathematics and environment. In fact, we have actually talked about a theme that we were thinking for a future episode, which was the impostor syndrome, or impostor phenomenon, as somebody thinks should be called. But I would like to know, what about the non-mathematical stuff? Do you just do math, or do you also do something outside math? Tamás?
Well, I have a family. So with 1.5 kids, second one is to be born early next year. So yeah, it's mostly my family who I devote my free time to. I mean, no such thing as free time. But other than that, well, thinking about still mathematics, whether it's research or how a certain idea could be explained better, to either my students or friends or just the general public. So I think that's the one thing that many kids go into studying mathematics without knowing what it's really like to do mathematics. And it's because of an idea or this picture that they are painted in high school. It's a recipe book. You just follow the instructions, get the answer in the end. If it's not right, you are just plain wrong. End of story.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, spending time with my family and thinking about mathematics.
Thanks. Cecília?
Yeah, it's a little bit similar in the sense that I also have 2 full kids.
An integer number of kids.
An integer number of kids. They are actually bigger, right? They are 10 and 12 years old. So it's I have a lot of fun with them. We play soccer, we play games. I also like to take some time for myself when I can. So I really need this time by myself, either to think about mathematics or to think about life, to read a book. Mm-hmm. So I like to do sports. I like to travel, to see the world. I like to meet people, to meet friends. I try always to have some time every couple of weeks at least to meet friends, girlfriends or whatever, just to speak about how I feel. And so for me, it's good. And also to do sports. I think it's important to get out, right? And do some sports. So that's what I do.
Thanks. Part of this podcast is to show not just that we are real people, it's also to show that we do also other things, that we are not just sitting in the office closed and in our own little world without interaction, which is one of these common biases about mathematician, the person that lives in there, the genius that lives in this hyperuranium, this separate world and never interacts with reality. Perhaps there are some, but mostly we are just human beings.
Yeah, certainly they are the exception if they exist.
So thank you very much for that. And so let's get to the point of what we have discussing so far. This fear of failing, fear of showing our limitations, and on the other hand, the fact that teaching mathematics is about failing so much that you start understanding something. And let me start with a trick question, in fact. So Tamás was a finalist in the Best Practice Teaching Awards of the university, and Cecília won the Best Teacher of the Year at our institute. So you both somehow won a teaching award this year. And the question is, why? Cecília, would you like to start?
I give the question back to Marit. Why did I win that? I have no clue. I was very surprised. I mean, I do have a clue on the things that I do that students like, and I can speak about that. So one thing that I think is that I really teach students and I see them. I see them as the beings that they are, as the people who feel. I see them and I care about them. So every day when I get to the room, to the lecture room, I want to know how they are. I want to know what's happening to them. Of course that I'm not a shrink, so I'm not there to kind of discuss like little personal things, which are sometimes also big personal things. So in this one-to-one, I cannot have with every single student, but I care a lot about them. And I think that because of that, I really try to see what will work for that group, for that particular group. And it's never the same, right? So one thing that a certain group of students might like to have really blackboard lecture and you kind of telling them content and content and content and they learn like that. And some group might not work like that. They might want to discuss with you. So I think that's maybe part of it, but maybe Marit can tell me because I'm still surprised.
Yeah, so for the record, I followed a few of Cecília's courses and I'm also doing my master research under her supervision. And I also voted during the ceremony for her. I'm sorry, Tamás. He was also nominated. But for me, the reason that I voted for you is that you are very engaging to the class. You are not like the separation between teacher and class is non-existing, actually. And also, I feel like your lectures are very interesting and engaging. You talk in a way that students are able to keep their attention for 45 minutes, which is not always the case, at least for me. And I think, yeah, you're a wonderful professor
Thank you.
Yeah.
It really touches me.
Yeah, so that's the reason that I voted for you. Yeah.
Thanks.
And I think that among maybe others is reasons why other students also voted for you, leading to the result of you winning the Teaching of the Year award. I'm sorry, Tamás, but
No worries.
yeah,
I
I've not
completely
followed the
agreed
classroom.
with the outcome. I think Cecília is a very engaging teacher. You capture students' attention easily, like somehow that comes natural to you because your excitement of doing mathematics spreads
Wow.
to your students. It was clear.
It's very strange to hear that.
We all felt it in the room, I think.
I was in the room and I stand with this. I love the 3 lectures, but it's true that you just pour energy out of you when you're talking about mathematics.
I'm really happy to hear that. I really love what I do and I love to teach. It's something that I had to learn. I was not natural. I feel that some people are, and I'm not. So, yeah. Thank you.
Your love for it really transpires when you do it.
Oh.
Sorry, Tamás, we interrupted you. Why did you were nominated for the teaching award and for the best teaching new things, whatever? I don't remember the name now. I said it a few minutes ago.
Good question. I guess you should ask the students. But yeah, so I can of course give you the keywords that they listed in these descriptions. So I think in my case it was mostly the unusual methods of teaching that I use. So it's not just traditional lecturing that I'm trying to use in my classes, but some more effective methods, such as blended learning and active teaching methods.
Can you define both of them? Because active teaching, I actually more or less know, but probably the audience doesn't. But
I don't even.
Okay. But blended learning, this is something that I'm struggling understanding.
Yeah, I don't know if like an official definition exists, but to me at least, it is just the use of multiple sources and formats, blending them into your teaching, basically just realizing and acknowledging that the outside world, the internet exists, and we can provide our students with various resources other than a book and the lectures. And that's what I'm trying to do, especially nowadays. It is fairly simple or relatively easy. For example, record yourself, explain a certain topic, and that takes us into the active part. Oftentimes, because this is how we did things historically, it's just a one-way communication of information. You just transfer knowledge, one person standing in the front, chalk and talk for half an hour. And especially during the pandemic, I think many of us realized that this is a waste of precious time that we spend together. Why don't we communicate and interact with one another when we are in the same room at the same time? And so the reason of recording these clips that I do is to have that stuff moved outside the classroom, so that there's space for interaction. Okay, and the active thing is about this, that students come to the classroom prepared, and learning or actual problem solving happens in the classroom, and it's done in an interactive way. So we actually discuss ideas, solve problems right there and then.
That sounds fantastic. I'm still struggling to understand how can I find the time to achieve something like that, if I have to be honest. But somehow I'm really aspiring at that now that I hear it. It sounds so much more well-rounded, engaging. Somehow it takes myself into the equation of building up the course as a student, in addition to just the lecturer building the course. I had this question, and we had this question in the preparation of this episode. Are you teaching to the student and with the students? And this felt like much more teaching with the students.
Yeah, the idea is, I mean, for me, it goes back to that first experience with that amazing high school teacher that I had, János Mike, I should say his name, who just involved us, made us part of the discovery. of these mathematical ideas and results. So that's the same. It goes back to that for me, at least. And when you can have this shared experience, I think learning happens right there, not when someone speaks at you or talks at you.
This seems to be a very common point between what both of you said. In fact, you, Cecília, look at the class as a whole for the people for who they are. And so somehow you make them part of the class because they are there, they are recognized, and then they are somehow free and empowered to talk to you and to talk with you. And you use the active learning to force them to be part of the class and
nudge them. I don't like the use of the word force.
Fair enough. Force is a strong of a word. I agree.
Yeah, no, I really like what you do and what you said now. And like you, Marcello, I was thinking, how would I find time to really do this as well as you've been doing? But I think that the time investment, it's probably major when you start. And then you can use these videos, right? So it's something that would pay back very quickly, at least if you're looking to pay, meaning that you just put a lot of time for the first times you do it. And then, so it seems like something very nice. But my question actually is, do students really watch this and do they really come to the classroom prepared?
They do.
They do.
Yes, that's the short answer. It's not easy to convince them or to have them realize that they should break away from the usual pattern. They normally, students come to the classroom, they expect you to present them with stuff, and this is flipping it on its head. So when I tell my colleagues always, when they ask me this question, how do you manage? How do you actually force them to go down that route? Is I'm just laying down the rules in the first, even before the first lecture. I use the learning environment, the bright space, to let them know before the course starts that this is how things will go, and I just stick to it. Like religiously, try and stick to that way of doing things. And what I found is that they really are on board with this for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there are exceptions, but that is always the case. But if you're explaining, telling them, this is what I'm doing, and I'm doing it because of these reasons, so being transparent and honest with them about your methods, I think that helps also. So, and then sticking with your methods, not diverting, going back to the same old when you see that it's not working for like a week or something.
I can also imagine that it's more rewarding for students that if you come prepared to a class and being able to discuss the material and that you achieve a better understanding of the material, that by itself is already a very big motivator once you realize that it has that kind of effect on you.
Indeed, and it's a better use of time in the classroom. I mean, because we are all there, people bring their ideas, they are still not maybe fully baked, but certainly more towards the actual goal than if you just come there completely fresh.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. In fact, I have had always this tension between mathematics, and we actually talked about this at the beginning of the podcast. Mathematics, but science in general, is made up by a process of refining failure. So you keep trying to find a path to some result, and you keep failing it, but with each failure you get an epsilon more of understanding until all these epsilons sum up, and somehow they draw the path that you were looking for. And so it's failure in the sense of making mistakes, in the sense of figuring things out and not being able to, in the sense of getting stuck, at least to me, is some core, if not the most important part of the process. And it's what leaves me with an understanding that doesn't go away after 5 minutes. Yet, the way we teach and the way we examine courses is about promoting the perfect answer, but punishing failure. When we grade the homework, even though we might say, okay, we don't remove many points for a computational error. We just look at the process. Still, any mistake there will reduce your grade. So somehow you are de-incentivized, like in school, to make mistakes. What I heard also before when you were talking about your class is a safe space where you expect people to make mistake, somehow I think that's the right step in the direction of normalizing making mistakes into the process. I still see this tension. At some point, you will have to evaluate them. And sorry, I spoke for 5 minutes to arrive to this question. But my question is, do you have a way on how to resolve this tension, or is still there in your courses?
For me, it's still there. I have no good answer to this question. It is a tension.
For me, the same. It's still there. But what I try to do as a teacher is to remind the students that every time that they come to my class, they are not there to be judged constantly, that this is going to happen. I cannot change that now. But in this moment, I'm not there to see who is the best student, who is going to reply to everything really correctly, that this is the moment to make mistakes. This is the moment to learn together. This is the moment that I don't care how strong they are, that they are going to become strong by being there and by making mistakes. So I try to kind of, diffuse this by saying, well, we do have to give you grades, but that's not what you should take from this class. These grades are going to be just a matter of something for one step of your life. You might need them, but that's not the biggest thing that you should take from my class. So.
And do you see this also lowering the social pressure among them? So like what I have experienced many times in my classes, and it's very much class dependent, but sometimes people are scared of asking a question because they see nobody else is asking it, even though they probably, getting back, you don't know what is in the mind of the other. So probably somebody else has the same question, right? But still, there is this fact that very often you get a question when it's clear that they know the answer. And it's very, very hard to get people that actually have doubts to ask questions. Again, it's not this is a generalization. There are classes in which this happens, but do you see this problem happening less in your way of approaching this normalization of mistakes?
I think so. I do when I speak to others, like teach, I see them saying, well, but no one participates, no one speaks up. And I think I do get the students to really talk and to make mistakes. And I will never, how do you say it, punish or say, my God, how did you come up with this question? So I kind of encourage, and I will usually try to take something which is wrong, which students say, and I would say sometimes they do come up with wrong solutions to like something, and I try to use it to come up with something good from it, to show them that it's okay to start there and that you can walk through. But so I do see that by doing that, the students do participate more and more in my lectures. So
that's wonderful. Thanks a lot. Actually, Tamás, okay, parenthesis, Tamás organizes the MESS, which is a meeting among lecturers to talk about teaching, what kind of issues we find, what kind of solutions we find, and try to brainstorm to overcome some of the issue and get together to find good ideas effectively. I think this could be a nice theme for a mess, in fact.
Certainly,
because
yes.
It's very hard, and there are a few of you that are able to lower this barrier and make the classes really engage.
Yes.
And it would be really nice to learn it.
Indeed, but there are ways of and tools that one can use even when they don't have this, perhaps the social skills or those skills that are required to have people open up. So I'm also not very good at that. I mean, I'm trying to get better and better. But what I also do is I use these polls, interactive quizzing during the lectures, so that we can at least, so that's a lower barrier to cross of entry, to just have a question appear on your phone and press, okay, out of a multiple choice question, just press one of the answers. I always encourage them to just go for whatever they think is best. We then see the results and in real time. Once the solution is revealed, we discuss all, if there's time, that is, and that is a key thing, we try and discuss all of those other ideas that appear on the screen. So, and I try and reach out to them, tell them, okay, so there was this group of 10 people who went for option B. Would someone explain, tell us what was their thinking? And often we find that it was basically the same idea they all had, and it was almost the right one. It just had to be tweaked slightly. There was a certain thing that didn't click for them, for that given question. We clean it up, and the next time they know what to think towards. So there are tools certainly that one can employ to activate the students.
These kind of tools might also be familiarizing students with making mistakes, right?
Oh, yes.
Because you're not going to be always right on a multiple choice question, even if you try to do very, very well. Yes. And if you create an atmosphere where you show that it's okay to make a mistake, I think that could be very helpful to students.
And it's also a good thing if they commit. So often it happens that you are asked a question, maybe you have multiple options to choose from, and the teacher then just reveals the answer and says, okay, it's this because of this and this and this. And you just convince yourself, oh, I was actually thinking that, not the other. By committing to an answer, writing it down, it doesn't have to be fancy, technology. It's just writing it down on the paper, giving them a minute to think about it, and then committing to their choice lets them see the difference between. So it's not as easy to shift back into the thinking, oh, I got it all along. I just I don't know, wasn't thinking the right way or something. It's easy to fool yourself into thinking that you know stuff. Making these mistakes is something that we should all, cherish or somehow value. Because as I said, if you don't make mistakes, you're not learning anything new. Anyone who ever did something for the first time messed it up.
Everybody's nodding.
Except Marcello with his with the thing that you baked, right? That we talked about. The first try that you did
was the best.
It was perfect, he said.
You baked something and you declared it a success, even though it was the first time.
That it was the first time, and it was very... Yeah, the panettone. Sorry, I forgot the word.
Yes. No, but wait, the story is... this is in episode 0 when we're introducing each other. So I like baking, and over Christmas I do panettone. That's typical Italian Christmas bake. And the first time I did it, besides making computational errors, so I have to wake up at 4 a.m. in the night to actually do the second baking. But besides that, it was fantastic. It was really good.
Second baking, I've heard the word second.
It goes in 2 bakes. So you first mix it with less
stages.
fat, and then you do it again, introducing fats after the gluten net has been built, basically. But first was very good. So I did it again the year after, and that one was just a disaster. So I wasted 1 kilo of flour.
But do you really follow recipes, or I'm very curious about that?
I do follow the recipes, but I do the obsessive thing.
I never follow recipes.
I think with a panettone it's very tricky because it has to raise right at the exact way with the exact strength so that you can mix it again. Otherwise, it just goes. And this is, I think, what happened the second time, that I made something wrong, but it was really a disaster. And the third wasn't in between. But it was a complete disaster at the second, so it goes back there. Sometimes you are lucky at your first try, but this doesn't mean you understood.
Yeah. No, point still stands. Yeah.
Indeed.
So to get back a little bit to teaching, I'm a student myself, and I've never had to prepare a lecture myself. But I'm wondering, how do you prepare lectures? Do you decide beforehand what you're going to talk about? What material you will cover? Yeah. Could you maybe introduce me to this secret?
That's a great question. I like this question because it really depends on what kind of lecture I'm going to do. So if it's something that I never taught before, new course, a new challenge to me. I like to watch lectures from others. So I watch videos, I see what they did that I liked. I see what I didn't like, and I tried not to do it. So I like to watch really videos. So this is something I will do for some lecture that I never taught. And I also like to use every lecture, even if I taught this many times before, as a way to learn something new. And sometimes it might seem like, how do you learn something new if you taught this course already 10 times or whatever? I try to learn about what was behind when they were showing these results, what was happening, was there a war happening, history, what was happening in the whole world, because I think it tells a little bit about how we do mathematics, how we, construct mathematics. So I always try to learn. This is one thing. So it's never a waste, it's never boring. And I do think that students don't know that we prepare usually much more than what they see, right? I usually, as I said, I like to have a plan on what I'm going to do, and a really clear plan. But more than a plan, I like to have guiding a question. So I want to start each class with some kind of guiding problem and work from there. So I don't want to start defining stuff without telling you why. And then every new definition or every new result that I show, I also try to think about why should we care about it? Why do we learn this? It's a lot of things that come into preparing the lecture, but one thing also, I read material. So I read lecture notes. So if you have to read that, I also do it myself to see where can you get stuck or what kind of things should I stress out for you that you can learn more or that you can really see what's happening. And I also try to put myself in your shoes. I mean, it's not that long that I was also, having to sit there and to learn. So I go back to this moment and I try to think, when did I struggle? And sometimes it's the same place, sometimes it's not. But still, I try to tell them, the students, this was the point that I struggle, that we all struggle. Please focus on that. So there is a lot of thinking that will come. And usually I will spend, if it's a course that I taught, I'm spending at least 2 hours or so to re-prepare and to rethink. And if it's something that I never taught, I will spend much more preparing it.
This is super eye-opening. I had no clue. In my head, a professor just shows up and gives a lecture and then is done and we all leave. But it's great to hear. But you can also see in your lectures that you put in the preparation, in my opinion. Is it the same for you, Tamás? Do you also do similar kind of preparations or is it different?
Oh, yeah. I mean, preparation is key, is everything, really, when it comes to giving a lecture. I liked the point about placing it in its historical context, every problem. I also try to do that in lectures, give some stories from history, place it in a cultural context so that they see that this is actually what people did and do. Mathematics is something we do, like dancing or playing chess. It's just another human activity. So that's one thing to realize. So oftentimes we tend to forget. So it's good to remind ourselves. And so when preparing, it depends also for me. I mean, if it's a completely new thing to me, lots of hours go into preparing for a lecture, then that collecting ideas, exactly as Cecília said, seeing what other people did and making notes. I think that's actually how teachers become, there is this notion of a good teacher. I think the way that happens, at least in my opinion, is that people observe other people while teaching, see what they like and what they don't like, and try to do that or not do that when they teach. No one goes into a lecture room as a teacher and decides or says, okay, today I'm going to give a terrible lecture. I'm going to be a bad teacher. No one is a bad teacher on purpose. The reason it might happen is that there is something going on in their lives, or It's just that they have less of that skill of empathy. So empathizing with your students, seeing what they struggle with, so they don't connect with the students. But no one does it on purpose. And of course, it's all about preparation, just to underline that point.
Can I just pick up on that? Because I really like what you said, that we look and we take what we like and we discard what we don't like. And I think that's what we do with life, right? Mm-hmm. We learn by seeing, by just looking Mimicking. At the whole world around us. And we repeat the things we loved and we throw the things we didn't like and go on learning with life. So that's how I do my whole life, observing the world and just taking from it what fits me. So.
Yeah, there is a great book right now. I miss the name of the author or the title, which is exactly about this. It says that also what is art is looking at the things you like, looking at the one you don't like, and then mixing the one you like and discarding all the things you don't like. So somehow fits with what you both said. Yeah. And in fact, it also resonates with the way I prepare courses. Even time-wise, actually. It takes a couple of hours to prepare a lecture. I've taught many times, and it takes 3-4 times that at least to prepare a new course. Given that we are talking about things that students do not expect, and given that we are actually running out of time, I'm curious actually, what do you think, what else is there that students do not realize about the teaching, the process of teaching, the work that gets into teaching, the act of teaching itself?
I think, well, what we just discussed, right, was a big, maybe like surprise to you, right, Marit?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I do think that all this time that we prepare is one thing. But another thing is the whole of us, like teachers. I think students many times look at us as the people who are going to judge them, who are going to evaluate them, and like really like separate beings and these special beings, right? And they don't see us there as someone who is there to help them, to guide them, to be with them, and to learn with them. So I would like students to know more of that I'm not there to judge them, that no teacher or very few teachers will find it fun to kind of like fail students. We are not there for that. We take no pleasure into doing this, even though many students still think we do. I do not enjoy. I love when a student has a 10. I love when I can see, wow, this person really gets what's happening here very deeply and very well. So I think that is, for me, what I would like students to know is that they can come to us, that we are there to really help them and not to oppose them. We are not there as just to fight them, but just to walk with them. And that's what I would like.
I love this. I really stand with it. Tamás?
Yeah, completely. And also the fact that we are human. We have discussed this. I mean, this has pretty much been the conversation here, is that we also make mistakes. So whenever I make a mistake, and believe me, I make many mistakes in my lectures, but whenever I make a mistake, I make a big fuss out of it. I try very hard not to erase any of my mistakes. I take my red chalk and, cross it out and write the correct thing that should have been there underneath it. And that's another thing. I mean, they might have these preconceived ideas. Students might have the idea that, there are these demigods of mathematics and they have it all in their heads. They were just born this way. All of the journey, these journeys that we discussed, all of the growth that we experienced and went through is not there. They don't see it. So they might have the impression that, I never get to be this good. That's something we need to deconstruct and somehow make more apparent that they see it. It's a process.
Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, we're almost out of time. I wanted to ask you if there's anything that you still want to add on the topic of teaching mathematics. What about you, Cecília?
Yeah, I think I had a lot more to to share. I'm really having fun here speaking to the three of you. One question that we didn't touch and that I was excited to discuss, but maybe it's a topic for next time. It's why should mathematics be something that we all care for, right? And for me, mathematics is much deeper than just a tool or than just something that we learn in order to solve problems. For me, there's something that I think it was Plato who would say that it brings us closer to the good. Somehow this search of the truth. So for me, mathematics is not only a tool, but also a way to make us better, people, better citizens, a way that brings us really closer to to being free. And when we can follow lines of thought, when we can be really rigorous about something, I think we get really much, much closer, not only to the truth, but also not to being fooled. I think mathematics is a tool to make us much stronger beings. And it's something we don't discuss so much. We just see we learn this because we are going to use it, or we don't want to learn because we are never going to use it. But we don't see that we do use it, even if we don't feel that we are really using it. So I would like that people think a little more about that, about how mathematics can be a tool to making us good.
Wonderful. Thanks.
That's beautiful. Very, very nice philosophy. And a very nice last statement, I think, from you. Thank you. Tamás, do you have any last things to add?
Oh, yes. So I have here in front of me a list of axioms that, just like the author, Federico Ardila, a Colombian mathematician, I firmly believe in them and also build my entire teaching philosophy around them. So he had this article published in the notices of the AMS called Todos Cuentan, Everybody Counts. And he lays down these 4 axioms, and let me now just read them. So axiom 1, mathematical talent is distributed equally among different groups, irrespective of geographic, demographic, and economic boundaries. Axiom 2, everyone can have a joyful, meaningful, and empowering mathematical experience. Axiom 3, mathematics is a powerful, malleable tool that can be shaped and used differently by various communities to serve their needs. And axiom 4, and this is perhaps the most important one, every student deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. So these are the things I believe in and build my teaching around.
Love it. I know him, and I had this in my website before. Now it's not here, but I love it.
Yeah, I have it in the code of conduct for the discussion boards on my courses. There are also the 4 axioms there with the link to his website. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it. It sounds super nice.
Oh, I should share that again with my students because they're just great. He's amazing. Also.
It sounds fantastic.
I wasn't really expecting that. Actually, we all knew that.
In addition, perhaps a few sources and resources, a few numbers, even though I know it's not just numbers, about teaching methods. So already almost 10 years ago, there was this huge meta-analysis of hundreds of papers on STEM education. And there is this professor at Stanford, Carl Wieman, who published an opinion piece, a commentary about this, where he summarized the findings. Basically, these authors, Freeman and his co-authors, analyzed more than 600 papers. About 200 of those papers matched their very rigorous standards for meta-analysis. And what they have found that these active learning methods of teaching, on average, decreased failure rates from 34% to 22% when compared to traditional teaching. And so at the end of this opinion piece, Wieman says we should stop comparing these new methods of teaching to old ways of teaching and compare their effectiveness. by him saying, if a new antibiotic is being tested for effectiveness, its effectiveness at curing patients is compared with the best current antibiotics and not with the treatment by bloodletting. Bloodletting was this medieval way of curing people by basically just cutting their veins and letting blood flow out so they are cured, I should explain. However, he goes on to say, in undergraduate STEM education, we have the curious situation that although more effective teaching methods have been overwhelmingly demonstrated, most STEM courses are still being taught by lectures, the pedagogical equivalent of bloodletting. So that's something for you to think about. And finally, I mean, another thing that we didn't discuss, I guess only touched upon these current things that happen in the world. So there's a lot of disinformation, and I think sharpening our minds, developing into these critical thinkers that Cecília was saying is very important in that as you said, we don't get fooled and exploited by other people. The other thing that appeared fairly recently, or has been a big jump in AI technologies, artificial intelligence, and their ability to solve mathematical problems. So there's this paper from last year by a group of researchers at MIT who basically managed to, at least for the first year math courses, train AIs to go from solving problems 8% of the time, fully, completely, to 80% success rates. And I just had a few experiments with ChatGPT the other day, fed it my midterm exam from this year, and basically out of the 6 problems, it perfectly solved 4.
Whoa.
In 2 problems, it was getting it mostly right, but it made some silly mistakes that people would never make. And I'm afraid that already we are behind, and our current ways of assessing mathematics are old-fashioned, and maybe we should revise them.
There are some successful experiments with something called ungrading that perhaps we could discuss at some point.
Oh, yes, I am aware.
Yeah,
But,
I would love that.
Yeah.
At some point.
But I think actually both that and the role of AI in mathematics could be topics for a nice next episode.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I'm very sorry that we have to cut the episode here because these are both very interesting last final notes. I want to thank you once again for your time, for being here, for giving us your opinions and your views on mathematics. And to the listeners, thank you for listening, and we hope to see you next episode.
This podcast is produced at the University of Colombia.